Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. Today, we're heading back to ancient Egypt. We've got some excerpts from the Wikipedia article on ancient Egypt.
Yeah.
And, well, let's just say, there's a reason everyone is still so fascinated by this civilization.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it lasted for thousands of years. Think about that. Longer than some countries have even existed.
That's mind-blowing. Okay, so I've always been curious about the Nile River. I mean, it was obviously crucial to them. But just how deeply did it shape their culture and beliefs?
It's a great question. See, the Nile's floods, they were so predictable, like clockwork. Each year, they deposited this fertile silt, which made agriculture possible. But it goes deeper than just the practical stuff, you know?
Oh.
The Egyptians, they saw this cycle as a reflection of cosmic order, what they called Ma'at,
Much.
right? Ma'at is a big concept, but essentially it represents truth, justice, balance those principles that govern the universe. To them, the Nile flooding, that was proof that Ma'at was working, that the universe was in harmony.
So the Nile wasn't just water. It was like a manifestation of their deepest beliefs.
You got it. Their calendar, based on the Nile. Myths, rituals, all tied to its rhythms. Even their afterlife beliefs connected to this idea of cyclical renewal, just like the Nile's annual rebirth.
Wow, that really changes how you see it. But ancient Egypt, I mean, it didn't just appear overnight, right? Fully formed.
Oh, no, definitely not. It went through phases, periods of stability, upheaval. Think of it like chapters in a really, really long book.
Okay, so chapter 1 then. What were those early stages like?
We got to rewind way back to the pre-dynastic period. This is like the prologue to our story. The Egyptian climate was different then, less arid. You had savannas full of animals and distinct cultures popping up along the Nile.
Like what kind of culture?
Well, you had the Badarian culture. They were amazing pottery makers, even used copper tools. Later, the Naqada culture came along and they were even more advanced, importing obsidian from Ethiopia for tools, then expanding their trade all the way to Mesopotamia.
They were already going international.
Oh, yeah. And over centuries, they went from these small communities to a real power controlling resources. They established centers at Nekhen, then Abydos, expanding their influence.
So they weren't always a unified kingdom.
Nope. But then comes the big moment unification. Around 3000 BC, this kicks off the early dynastic period. And it's where we meet the legendary King Manes. Or, well, maybe Narmer.
Wait, Manny's or Narmer, two different guys.
It's still debated. Some think they were the same person. But the famous Narmer palette, you've probably seen images, it depicts this unification of the two kingdoms, like a symbolic birth of a unified Egypt.
I've definitely seen that palette. Pretty striking. So what changed after unification?
Well, with Memphis as the capital, the Pharaohs, they had control of the Nile Delta's resources, those trade routes. It was strategic. They consolidated power, accumulated wealth.
Setting the stage for the Old Kingdom, right? Pyramids, the Sphinx, all that.
Bingo. The Old Kingdom, often called a golden age. It was a time of huge advancements. Art, architecture, technology, the Giza pyramids, the Sphinx, those are the iconic symbols. And it was all fueled by this strong central administration and, that awesome Nile-powered agriculture.
I bet. But those pyramids, they weren't just built for kicks, right? There was a deeper meaning.
Oh, absolutely. They were massive tombs meant to ensure the pharaoh's safe passage to the afterlife. You gotta remember, the pharaoh wasn't just a king. He was divine. His death was a cosmic event. Those pyramids were showcasing his power, connecting him to the gods.
A power move and religious statement all in one. Multitasking pyramids.
Exactly. Statements for eternity. But it wasn't just about monuments. The Old Kingdom, they developed a sophisticated administration. Viziers, they oversaw everything, from taxes to managing labor for those huge projects.
So organized.
Yeah.
Amazing. But I have a feeling things couldn't stay golden forever, could they? What happened?
Well, maintaining that vast kingdom, that complex administration, it took its toll. Yeah, centuries of these lavish projects, a big bureaucracy, it probably strained their resources.
So even the mighty Egyptians had budget problems.
Kind of, yeah. And then, to make things worse, Egypt got hit with these severe droughts between like 2200 and 2150 BC.
Oof, not good.
Nope. And this combo of economic strain and the environment, well, it probably triggered what's called the First Intermediate Period. Basically, things got messy, decentralization, conflicts, instability.
A rough patch. But they bounced back, right? I mean, we're still talking about them.
They did. Ancient Egypt was tough. Out of that chaos, the Middle Kingdom emerged. Theban kings, they reunited Upper and Lower Egypt, bringing back some stability.
Okay, so round two. What was different this time? Did they learn from the Old Kingdom's mistakes?
It seems like it. The Middle Kingdom rulers, they were more practical, focused on stability. They moved the capital to Itchawi. It was strategically located in the Fayum Oasis. Plus, they launched these land reclamation projects, irrigation, boosting agriculture.
Smart move.
Yeah.
Keep people fed, things are calmer.
Exactly. They also beefed up their military, securing borders, expanding into Nubia, even built defenses in the Eastern Delta to protect against threats.
So more proactive. And did their culture, did it flourish with this stability?
Oh, yeah. The Middle Kingdom, it was a really creative time. Art, literature, they were exploring these sophisticated themes, morality, fate, the big question.
Well, definitely more than just pyramids. But this stability, it didn't last forever, did it?
Sadly, no. The Middle Kingdom kings, their power weakened, and this opened the door for someone new, the Hyksos.
The Hyksos, who were they?
They were a Western Asian people who'd settled in the Nile Delta. And when Egypt was weak, they seized control, made their capital at Avaris.
So ancient Egypt was ruled by foreigners. Oh, what happened?
Big power shift. The native kings, they had to retreat south to Thebes. They became like vassals to the Hyksos. But it's interesting, the Hyksos, they didn't just dominate, they adopted some Egyptian customs, even incorporated Egyptian gods into their own beliefs.
So it was more of a blend.
Yeah, you see that in the archaeology. But the Egyptians, they weren't exactly thrilled being under Hyksos rule. They waited for their chance.
Leading to an epic rebellion. Please tell me they kicked the Hyksos out.
They did. It took decades. But the Egyptians, led by King Ahmose I, they finally drove the Hyksos out. This victory, it started a whole new era, the New Kingdom.
The comeback kings. So what was the New Kingdom like?
This was when Egypt was at its most powerful. Ahmose I, he founded the 18th dynasty. And the pharaohs who came after him, they focused on expanding the borders, being a major force in the Near East.
Back on top, ready to show off their strength. Who are the big names?
This is when you get those famous pharaohs.
Yeah.
Thutmose III led successful military campaigns, expanding the empire further than ever. And of course, Ramesses II.
Oh yeah, Ramesses II. Wasn't he obsessed with building stuff?
You got it. He was a building machine. Statues of himself everywhere, temples, even carved entire temples into cliffs, like Abu Simbel.
Sounds like he had an ego.
He definitely liked to make a statement. But hey, he was also a good military leader. Fought the Hittites at Kadesh, and actually negotiated the first recorded peace treaty in history.
So more than just show. What else was happening in the New Kingdom? Just conquests and monuments?
It was also a really vibrant time for culture. Art, literature, religious practices, it all thrived. This was peak Egypt.
But, I'm sensing a but here. What led to their decline this time?
Even the greatest empires have problems. The New Kingdom, they started having internal issues. Corruption, tomb robberies.
People have always loved a quick payday, huh?
Apparently.
Yeah.
And then there were external threats. The Sea Peoples, we still don't know much about them, but they raided the coasts, weakening Egypt's control.
Trouble on all sides.
Exactly. And then the Amun priesthood, they gained a lot of influence, wealth, land. It challenged the pharaoh's authority. Add to that the Libyans from the west, still the Sea Peoples. It all added up. The New Kingdom crumbled, leading to another fragmented period, the Third Intermediate Period.
So, ancient Egypt. It's like this constant cycle, huh? Rise, fall, repeat. Fascinating how resilient they were. We're not done yet, though, are we? There's more to this story.
Oh, there's definitely more. It's easy to get caught up in the big picture, empires, pharaohs. But I always find myself wondering, what was it like for, the regular people?
Yeah, what was daily life like? Were they all building pyramids?
Not quite. I mean, those massive projects, they did need a lot of workers, but for most Egyptians, life revolved around something much more familiar, agriculture.
Right, the Nile, their lifeline. So farming was the backbone of their society. Makes sense. What about their social structure, though? Was it rigid, or was there some flexibility?
It was hierarchical, for sure, but not completely fixed. At the top, you had the pharaoh and the royal family, considered divine rulers.
The OG one-percenters.
Aha, pretty much. Then you had the elite, officials, priests, scribes, they had it good. Nice homes, fancy clothes, plenty of free time.
Must be nice.
Right. But then, the vast majority of Egyptians, they were farmers, artisans, laborers, working hard to support their families, keep society going.
So not all doom and gloom for the commoners. They had some fun, too, right?
Oh, absolutely. The ancient Egyptians loved to celebrate. Festivals were a big deal for their gods, for the harvest, sometimes just because. Music, dancing, feasts, games, the whole works.
It's like a good time. Speaking of games, they were big into board games, weren't they?
Yeah. Senate was super popular. It was all about strategy and chance. I can just imagine families gathered around, rolling dice, trying to outsmart each other.
Just like us today. So cool to see those connections, across time. But let's go back to those pyramids for a second. What was their significance beyond being tombs?
Those pyramids, they were more than just burial sites. They were power, innovation, and a reflection of their complex beliefs. Remember, they believed the pharaohs were divine, and the pyramids, those were their path to the afterlife.
Multi-purpose mark.
Exactly. And to build them, the planning, the organization, the engineering, it's mind-blowing. They had to understand astronomy, math, geometry.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, what humans are capable of. And those temples, too. Pretty impressive stuff.
Oh, yeah. Temples were central to their religious life, dedicated to specific gods and goddesses. The layouts often reflected their beliefs about the universe.
I'm picturing grand, imposing structures, towering columns, intricate carvings.
You got it. Massive pylons at the entrance, courtyards leading to these huge halls with rows of columns, and the walls covered in reliefs and hieroglyphics, stories of gods, pharaohs, the afterlife.
Wow, just amazing. What about their art, though? What made it so unique? The figures, the hieroglyphics, they're such a distinct style.
It was all about symbolism. They weren't trying to be realistic. They wanted to convey specific messages, usually religious or political.
So, meaning over-realism.
Exactly. The figures, they're stylized, often in profile, with frontal eyes. That was intentional, following their artistic conventions. And the hieroglyphics, those were part of the art too, adding layers of meaning.
Everything had a purpose, didn't it?
Absolutely. And speaking of purpose, their whole fascination with the afterlife, the mummification, elaborate tombs, Shabtai figurines to do chores in the afterlife, they really believed in continuing after death.
It's like they packed for an eternal vacation. Food, furniture, even servants.
They wanted to make sure the afterlife was comfy. Their burial rituals were so complex, all about guiding the deceased to the next world.
It's incredible, thinking about everything we've covered, the dynasties, the achievements, their beliefs, those glimpses into their daily lives.
Yeah.
What do you think is ancient Egypt's most enduring legacy? What makes them still relevant today?
It's hard to choose just one thing. Their influence is everywhere. Architecture, art, language, even how we understand astronomy and medicine, and just the fact that their civilization lasted for so long, it shows us what humans are capable of, our resilience, creativity, our fascination with the past.
Yeah, it really makes you think. And you know what? I have a question for our listeners to think about. Knowing what we know about the ancient Egyptians, their beliefs about the afterlife and all that, what do you think they would find most surprising about our world today? It's something to ponder as we wrap up our journey through ancient Egypt. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep exploring.